Hey guys, my name is Super, Destiny Enthusiast, and I will be your Dungeon Master. Now, this is a Master Solo Guide for Warlocks for Grasp of Avarice. Hunters and Titans, you will be getting your own separate guides relatively soon, so stay tuned for those. I'm going to assume everyone watching this has a basic understanding of the mechanics within this dungeon. If you do not, my guide for this dungeon for all classes will be linked in the description and comments of this video. Now, with that said, let's get into this. For the first encounter, I would recommend a solar sword and some sort of arc-based secondary or primary. Remember, match game is present throughout this dungeon, and you'll want to have your weapons and loadouts customized and ready for these situations. You're going to want to have things like Risk Runner, Lament, and Sleeper. Basically, any of the really hard-hitting weapons, you're going to want to have them here, as it makes this dungeon a lot easier, and without them, it becomes more of a drag. With that said, I would just slap on Passive Guard for this first encounter, pop Devour, and kill everything with your sword until you have enough burden engrams to proceed to the next part. Now, when the floor opens up and you drop down, make sure, when you are proceeding, that you take out the Hive Shrieker immediately, as he will melt you a lot faster in Master Mode. He hits way harder here. For the ads, you can kill them, or you can run past them. Personally, I'd kill a few until you know you can make it to the navigation part of this dungeon safely. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone watching this already knows how to navigate and avoid all the traps within this part of the dungeon, so I will be skipping over it until we arrive at the door and switches part. I'm only going to suggest that you switch the top tree Dawnblade before this part of the encounter. For this part, this is where you need to open the two big doors to proceed to the other room. Now, what I would do here personally is just jump on top of this flap, and then jump an Icarus dash across to the room where you can jump up and open the first main door. This is a lot faster than going from room to room. Then, I would go back down and jump across to the other room, and clear out the ads within that room. Just watch out for the trap in there. Then, I would flick the switch and kill the Shrieker. Take your time with the Shrieker. With it, I just used my rift and my bow, and I just bowed it down. Just be aware, it packs quite a punch in Master Mode. Then, kill the ads that are protecting the switch in the big door room. Activate the switch within that room to open the second big door, then just jump onto the flap, activate He Rises, and glide across and kill the ads and get ready to proceed to the next room. Now, before proceeding, my only suggestion is that you switch to a battle rifle for the wizards. I am going to assume that you know how to do this part, just play your life, and watch out for Jimmy the Can when you open the final door, and you should be fine. Alrighty, now, if everything has gone right, you should have arrived at the entrance for the Ogre boss fight. Now, a few things are going to change here in the Master Mode. There are going to be anti-barrier knights in each of the two ad rooms, and the regular knights are now going to have arc shields. Now, there are a few strategies here for this boss fight. I'm going to go over the main two, and you can decide which one you prefer for yourself. You can either use Lament paired with Passive Guard along with a Well of Radiance, or you can use Sleeper paired with Particle Deconstruction along with Well of Radiance. Either or have their own advantages and disadvantages here, but personally I went with Sleeper for this part. Now, things you must have for this encounter is an arc-based auto rifle with anti-barrier rounds. Trust me, you're going to want a backup anti-barrier weapon, and you're going to want something arc-based to deal with the shielded knights. Auto rifle is best. Now, I would also say having a blinding grenade launcher is a must-have here, as it makes picking up the burden engrams easier and gives you more room to breathe within this encounter. Now, for mods, you're absolutely going to want void resistance for sure. This ogre boss absolutely hurts and will melt you fast if you're caught off guard. I went with a concussive and void resistance, but honestly, melee resistance for the thrall and knights isn't a bad idea if you're having a problem being swarmed by the ads. Protective light is also a must. Taking charge and shield breaker charge are huge here as well. Now, for exotic armor, you have a few options. I would recommend Starfire Protocol for an extra Divine Protection Grenade or Fusion Grenade, or Necrotic Grips for the ads. Sunbracers and Karnsteins aren't bad here either. If you have your own strategy, then maybe you can incorporate yours with mine. So, a few tips I'll give for this part. 1. When going into the rooms to kill the ads, or the ad rooms, kill the champion immediately. Pop your well each time you go into the room. You'll get it back when you pick up 10 burden engrams. 2nd, wait for your super each time before going into the ad rooms to pick up the burden engrams. Seriously, you're going to want to have your well, otherwise you probably won't survive inside of the rooms without it. 3rd, if you're waiting for your super, pick up the Scorch Cannon. Don't drop it. This will prevent the Fallen from respawning in. Just watch out for the Thrall and ads as they will still spawn in. 4th, when depositing the burden engrams, crouch down behind the crystal, either with a rift or divine protection, just to be safe. This boss encounter will probably take you 3 to 4 damage phases if everything goes right. Just remember to take your time and play your life. Remember, you aren't being rushed or anything. If you have your own strategy that you find personally effective for yourself, then hey, stick with that. Now, I'll be moving on to the mine part. For the mine encounter, not much has changed besides the enemies hitting harder. I would just recommend top tree Dawnblade or bottom tree Dawnblade. If you do not have the black armory sparrow like myself, I recommend using a sparrow with the short summoning perk. I also recommend having a sword with passive guard and running double arc resistance. And you can run Risk Runner if you really want to. If you have your own path you take for this encounter that you're comfortable with, then stick with that. Or you can follow my path, and you should be fine. Just make sure when you're directly near the mine extensions, especially for the one in the Eye of the Skull, you need to be exactly near them or directly on top of them, otherwise they may not activate. Now, just a quick editor's note here, no script or anything. When you're on Mine B, you can blind the dregs with a blinding GL. It'll make it going across to Mine C a lot easier so they won't shoot your sparrow from behind. When on Mine C, I would say 100% kill all the dregs on Mine C, because if you leave Mine C, they will seriously mess up your sparrow without hesitation. Also, if you have a sword with the new Ogre's perk, or as I call it, Swifty perk, it makes this part just a lot easier, especially because you could just glide to the dragon and instantly kill them. When going to Mine D as well, go on the top booster because you can get the extra Mine Fuse, and if you're running bottom tree Dawnblade, you can just Phoenix Dive out of the eye all the way down. There you go, editor's note, done. Now, for the Fallen Shield encounter, I would recommend switching to a Void Sword and putting on Overload Sword with Passive Guard, and make sure you switch to Devour Nova Bomb. The mechanics within this encounter do not change, but there will be Overload Captains that spawn in with the Servitors. The Servitors will also be Void Shielded. I also recommend Blinding Grenades here as well. As a quick side note, if you kill an Overload Captain, be aware that there may be more that spawn in if you do not take down the Servitor's shield fast enough. Just be aware of this. Otherwise, the encounter is the same. Just go from island to island, taking out the parts of the shield until you have to go to the middle island to proceed to the boss encounter. Now, for the final boss encounter, let's go over things that change. First, there will be 3 barrier servitor champions, one at each respective sides of the arena. Note, their spawns will be stagnated and a bit random at times. There may be moments where only 2 of them are out in the arena, or there may be only 1 out, or all 3 can be out at once. Just be aware of this, it is kind of random. Note, these champions should never travel to the middle boss island. Another note, each time after a damage phase, so after you've dealt damage to the boss, these champions will respawn and reappear each time, so be prepared for them. Otherwise, the rest of the encounter remains the same. Now, let's talk strategy. Personally, for this part, I would just throw your sleeper out the window because you're going to want to use Lament here. It makes dealing with the champions an easier task and it heals you. Now, make sure you have some sort of backup anti-barrier weapon as well, in case you run out of Lament. There aren't any elemental shields here, so use whatever you like. Blinding Grenades are also a huge help here as well. For dealing with the Vandal and Shank bosses, use the Scorched Cannons to kill them. Seriously, it saves you ammo and it's a lot easier. If you want to, you can pop a well and sword the Vandal boss to death, and pop the engrams, but only if you feel confident. Just make sure to watch out for dregs as they will constantly be respawning throughout the whole encounter. Now, let's talk mods and subclasses. For mods, double arc resistance or arc and sniper resistance is the play. I was 1375 going into this master dungeon with 8 resilience running only double arc resistance for this part, and the Shank mini boss or the Shank crew member was still pinging me for pretty much half my health per shot, so sniper's resistance isn't really a bad play for whenever he's alive. Protective light and charged mods are still must-haves here. Passive guard is also a must if you're running Lament. If you have Lucent Blade, it can have some usability here, especially for boss DPS. Just thought I'd give it a shout out. Subclass here, I would go with Well of Radiance. This is so when the boss DPS occurs, you can pop the Well of Radiance and sword the boss down. I would recommend high resilience, at least tier 7 here, and high recovery as well, at least tier 8. For exotics, Necrotic Grip are my go-to for the poison damage against the adds and the champions, and against the boss. Starfire Protocol isn't bad here either, and neither are Karnsteins, they can be decent at times. Now, with all that said, to sum it up, you're going to want to kill the champions, kill the captain's crewmates, and then pick up enough burden engrams to start the DPS phase. This should only take 3 to 4 damage phases to kill the boss. If it takes more, that's fine. Just keep rinse and repeating this counter until the boss is dead. There is no rush. With that said, this will conclude this guide. If you wish to check out my other dungeon guides, there will be a playlist for them at the end of this video. Titan and Hunters, your guides will be out soon for this dungeon, so stay tuned for those. Otherwise, remember to subscribe, and thank you all for watching. Super out.